Hello, welcome to Selectmen's Roundtable. After a bit of a hiatus, we're back. And with me are the other members of the Board of Selectmen, Beth Cassavant, Moira Miller, Mo DiPaolo, and Jim Kane. So it's been, admittedly, a few months since the last time we did this. We will endeavor to be more responsible in taping these shows. I'm not quite sure how that will go, but we're going to try. And we do find this a great opportunity to speak with the folks in Shrewsbury and try to call out certain matters that we'd like to make them aware of. So here we are on a rainy night towards the end of June, and town meeting was back in May. That's the beginning of setting us up for the fiscal year. That'll begin on July 1st. So I don't know if we have any reflections or comments on what happened at town meeting, and perhaps that's a point at which we can start off.
Well, it was actually a pretty quiet town meeting, I thought. I mean, we had a few moments of drama. We had two petition articles that got some attention and took some time, but other than that, it was pretty uneventful. The second night looked like it was going to bring us into a third night, and all of a sudden it moved along pretty quickly, and we finished up. So I thought it was one of the more quiet town meetings, actually. If you took those two petition articles out, there wasn't much.
And in some ways, having a quiet town meeting, I think the fact that it was Kevin Mizigar's first annual town meeting as town manager, I think it's a tribute to the work, the preparation he did to get the warrant in good form for us, and also a reflection on how things really have gone in the last year, I think. No big bumps in the road. The board's planning to do some one-year evaluation of Mr. Mizigar's work shortly. The budget process went, I think, pretty smoothly through the season. And the petition articles, I mean, actually just the volume of petition articles that the board and the town is seeing in the past few years is, it's really ramped up. And some folks, it's interesting to watch how people are reacting to that. Some people think it's wonderful that people are coming forward with the right to petition, and others have some objections, particularly when similar articles come back year after year after year. I don't know if we want to touch on that.
I thought it was fascinating that the revamping of our personnel policies and the budget occurred within 12 minutes.
Right.
There were virtually, I don't recall one question. Yes, it was very well laid out in the package. People took it seriously. People have known for a number of years that a number of key people are going to be retiring. Key positions would be becoming open. I think Kevin laid out a very thoughtful, careful plan. At first, people thought all of that change was job for job, that there would be umpteen more positions you walk through. And it went through, and I think it was 12 minutes in all honesty. So I was fascinated by that. As to the initiative petitions, I just don't know why folks go that route. If they come in with an idea, I think the various boards and commissions have been willing to deal with them. I think some people at town meeting feel as though people are trying an end run when they come right to town meeting and they don't allow for the more formal. I mean, if we want to change a single bylaw, think of how many hearings it goes through and everything else. So I think what I've heard from people was they feel a little uncomfortable. They feel it's a short shrift of the legitimate process to talk about how things are done. And then you get to town meeting and you certainly have a full and thorough vetting. I don't know why people continually bring back a couple of the same petitions every year or so. You would think if the outcome is rather clear, you might go with that outcome for at least a couple of years or change it. But again, that's the beauty of the petition article. Yourself and 9 friends, and off you go.
Right, right. I think it is. I think there is. I guess it's depending on the article and the subject matter. I think there are some that certainly would warrant more time, more discussion, within the community than is allowed in the petition article process. And so, you know, there are cases, I think, where people may be justified in feeling that things just sort of were pushed through, if you will, without full debate. But as you said, that's the process. So,
Exactly.
you know,
Well-
and someone else could bring a petition article to change that. You know, I mean, that's the way it goes. So.
I do enjoy
We've
that
had that happen.
organic nature.
Yeah, it's pure citizen involvement.
Yeah, we've had that happen, or at least motions to reconsider after something went through. I think a lot of people who I've heard comment on it, and I like the petition process. I think when it's used correctly, I think it's good. But I think there's a lot of people who see town meeting as a business meeting and see some of these petition articles as are more social issues that I know some people actually left town meeting because they said this isn't what we're supposed to be doing. Now, whether or not, you can make the argument whether we should or we shouldn't, but there's some of that people aren't comfortable with that.
Yeah.
But the process works. Obviously, there are people comfortable with it because some of them have passed, some of them
Some
haven't.
have it, right.
I also think you have some people that joined or ran for a town meeting because of the citizens petitions and the social nature of them, the way that we're taking up things that maybe are outside of the regular business as well.
Well, things like that are generally left for the Brookline town meeting to
Right.
decide nuclear policy and other such matters, but.
But I thought the way the styrofoam article worked and went, I thought was a really thorough vetting of the article. And that's one that I think we'll see back, even though it's a repeat, and people would be welcoming that to come back because it was more, I don't know that people voted, town meeting members I don't think voted against it on principle. They voted against it that it needed to be cleaned up a little bit and go through a little bit more of the process, go before the Board of Health. I know that was my personal feeling on it was, this is a great concept, but it needs to be refined. And so and that came forward from an adult, of course, but also had students behind it. And I think they should be, come back to us and come back to the town.
Ironically about that one, and styrofoam, I think it should be banned. But I still think things like the bag ban, styrofoam ban should be statewide. I just think they're more effective that way. But it was ironic that the entities, or the entity that would be the most affected was the school department.
Of course.
It was going to add a significant cost. People say not so significant, but adding 10, 20, 30 cents to the price of a meal, it was a legitimate concern of theirs. So I think there's some things that need to be addressed and see if there are ways to be able to get the cost down or at least make it cost neutral. I think that one's a step in the right direction. I really think the plastic bag one was a step in the right direction. I was kind of hoping the state was going to pick it up this year if Boston got involved in it, but they didn't. But you look at plastic bag thing a year after now,
It's second nature.
nobody died.
Second nature. You just bring a bag.
I find more people not taking bags because I don't know if you noticed in the shops, people say, "Would you like a bag?" And a lot of people go, "No, I'm all set." And so you see a lot of people carrying out the one or two items that normally would have gone into a plastic bag probably. They're not. They're just carrying them out. They don't need it. So
I carried a
there's
stack
there's a
of clothes
positive
out the other
effect.
day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty neat the way it worked. I thought it was pretty quiet.
So we had 4 petition articles. One was to alter the manner in which water rates are approved, that we as water commissioners would need to bring our proposals to town meeting. That was defeated. That was I don't know if it was exactly the same, but we had seen that before. One was to take fluoride out of the public water supply, that the proponents, not because they had any change of heart, I think they decided that their proposal wasn't fully fleshed out. They requested that it be defeated, and they'll likely be back. The styrofoam, as we mentioned, and then also a committee to study electronic voting methods at town meeting. I do think it's important for people to, just for us to explain, for the annual town meeting, as some have already mentioned, you need 10 signatures from registered voters. That's all that is necessary to get a petition article on an annual town meeting warrant. To get on a special town meeting warrant, I forget, it's either 100 or 200 or a percentage of registered voters. It's a little higher bar, but it is a tribute to the town meeting form of government. Some folks I know speak, there are some folks who think we should convert to a city form of government. I don't think there's any petition mechanism at all similar to that. If we did go to a city, I think there might be some way, it would require a townwide vote. But we're seeing more and more every year. And as Jim mentioned, some communities take on some large social questions. When I worked for the town of Princeton, I was doing some research, and I was looking through some old town meeting minutes, and I found that in the 70s, Princeton declared itself a nuclear-free zone by town meeting action.
Work to date.
Yeah, that's it.
That's right, very
That's right, yes.
successful.
Very successful.
And it's interesting, I mean, the directions that towns decide to go in relative to social issues or more of a business meeting, as was said. But what else at town meeting? I mean,
Could I touch on one thing?
sure,
Where did that fourth article go about electronic voting?
it passed.
No, thank you. No, I know that, but where is it now? Because it was rather an organic gathering.
There was, so a committee is, forgive me, a committee, I know you missed some meetings, and that doesn't mean that you necessarily didn't know what the results were, so.
No, I did know the result.
Forgive me. So, the past language establishes a committee with certain personnel on it. The moderator had floated around the idea of putting together an organizational meeting. That hasn't happened.
Okay,
yet.
so it's still just percolating?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I was checking in on, because I don't know, without a steering committee, I don't know how one of those groups functions without a natural ally of the proponents taking that leadership role and then probably leading it in a certain direction. As I think you alluded to, John, it's very seldom that you see a fire station building committee appointed and decide there's no need for a fire station.
Yeah, right, yeah,
Or
yeah,
in this
so,
case,
right.
you appoint a committee to look at certain changes to town meeting, and voila, they recommend certain changes to town meeting. So,
That one's going to be interesting, because I think most of the time, a building project is more obvious, the need of it. This one, in my opinion, it's a nice to have. I'm not opposed to it. I don't think it's a need to have. So it'll be interesting to see what people think. If it is going to make town meeting more efficient, I think it's probably a good idea. And we'll have to see. I did find it kind of interesting that.
can I just make an observation to your comment?
Mhm.
I look at this town meeting, I've only been involved for what now? 9, 10, 11 years or something? 12, no, 9, I guess. I don't think any of our town meetings that I've participated in have been inefficient. You have to stand
Exactly.
up once in a while.
Right.
Some lovely ladies they count the
works,
people,
right,
and
very
you move
well.
on.
Right.
My issue with
people
this.
think that's inefficient when we have to stop and take a standing count. I don't,
Oh, I
but
think it's part of the game. It's great, I think.
I don't know that it's inefficiency. I think it's more the transparency piece is what I was hearing too. Knowing who votes and how they vote, so that when you're voting for a town meeting member at the polls on election day, you know what you're getting. Because a lot of times people don't know who everyone
Yeah,
is.
but
Well,
that's
that'll-
interesting though, because in the I think one visit we had from the proponent, there was a menu of, whether it's just red, green, or white, for or against or not voting. And then there was the registering and getting my clicker, Jim Kane, Precinct 5, and then recording a vote.
Right. I think there's various degrees.
Yeah,
And I
various
guess that's
degrees
probably
of
the purpose of the
expense.
study committee is to decide
Yeah.
But
what to bring forward.
to me, one of the problems with that approach is that all you know is that that town meeting member voted yes or no. You don't know why they might have voted yes. You don't know why they might have voted no. You don't know that maybe, for example, you're talking about the styrofoam. They actually support it, but there were other technical issues as to why not. So sometimes that data can be used by others in a manner that is, maybe not, goodwill, if you will, towards the individual. So it's tough, and to me, it's a very expensive solution.
Yeah.
I'm going to be open-minded about what they do and bring back, but it's an expensive solution that's maybe looking for a problem, and they're going to have to justify, to town meeting there is a need.
Honestly, if we're looking for transparency or accountability, whatever you want to call it, I think the place to start that would cost no money is to publish the data on the town clerk site of people's attendance. Because when you have a 200,
Right.
there's always a reason you can't go. There's work, there could be an illness or whatever. So you need to take that into account. There are some people who don't show up a lot.
Yeah.
And when you have 240 town meeting members, and the first night I think you have 201, somebody said, well, that's not bad. It was only like 30-something. There was like 39 people didn't come in. Yeah, but it's only a 240
You don't know.
member body. So and attendance typically goes down second and third nights. I think people should be concerned whether or not their town meeting members actually show up, let alone how they vote. I do know people who have been town meeting members. I know one, been town meeting member for years, never went to a meeting. And I asked
Yeah,
the
see, that's
person,
important.
why they kept running, and they said, well, they send me the paper every year, and I sign it and send it in. And so, really, that's really what happened. And so I think that is a good place to start and get people who really want to be involved. Once in a while, you miss a meeting, you can't help it, but when you see a pattern to it, people really, they're not interested if they don't show up. So
I'm concerned about, giving somebody a clicker or whatever you want to call it, simply because some people may be older and they're not comfortable with technology. And it's just another reason to say maybe town meeting is moved from me. And one of the hopes you have at any town meeting, open or elected, is that you get that 18-year-old who went down to sign up the day he or she turned, to the Mr. Donahue and some of the folks who have since moved on, but served for years and could bring different perspectives to different questions. I think it's important to have a good spread if you're going to have the town meeting model.
I think there's also just something nice about the tradition involved with the town meeting model, and you lose something, I think, when you bring technology too far into it.
Well, in the Norman Rockwell painting Freedom of Speech, the guy with the warrant in his pocket doesn't have a clicker in his hand.
Like our warrant is still on
Yeah,
paper. It
paper,
doesn't
right.
come to me on my phone.
Yeah.
It's on paper. I like that.
Yeah.
So what Jim mentioned, it was considered very quickly, but a major development coming out of town meeting was the acceptance of the personnel proposals relative to some reorganization of town hall. Should we touch on that a little bit? Because I think
I think we should.
so. Mr. Mizigar has come forward and proposed. We have what's called a very flat organizational chart. We have the voters, always the voters first, the Board of Selectmen, the town manager, and then various department heads under the town manager. The department heads, many of our department heads are, they're not working foremen, but they're in the field a great deal. And most of our peer communities have abandoned that model or revised that model to have things that we don't have. A director of, and I may have the wording wrong, but someone in charge of public works, someone in charge of HR, someone in charge of finance, someone in charge of planning and code. And this is a move to take some of the business functions and away to let these people do what their particular expertise is. And to bring, we're hoping, some greater efficiencies. Mr. Magato as well was examining a move like this. We do anticipate, or we know about certain retirements that are coming up. This is a good time to do it, but I don't know if anyone wants to talk a little more detailed about what's going on. Public Works, I guess, is the one that's sort of rising to the forefront.
Well, in the past, you saw Dan undertake, was it opportunistic reorganization, I think it was, with the retirement of Nancy Allen if I'm correct. And some of those functions within the Board of Health morphed into more of a regional effort, but the building inspector at the time was covering for that for a while. But when you have an organization that flat, as department heads may retire, you do have the chance to look at it. And I do think Public Works is a good example between water and sewer and the highway. And, you know, regardless of the truck you may drive in, grass is grass. It needs to be cut, trees need to be dealt with, snow needs to be removed. So I think the reorg that has come forward on the operational sides will be a good step for the community, aligning possibly more strategically some of the capital investment that then follows the capital investment, if you will, underground, that then follows the capital investment at pavement level. So it's going to be an interesting opportunity. One of the things you touched on ever so gently is, remember, we lost the gentleman who was, I'm going to say, the field operations manager at the highway yard. And he took a position closer to Boston where he not only got a pickup truck to drive back and forth many miles from his home. I think he went from having a crew of 6 or 8 in Shrewsbury to having an administrative crew of 4, and then assistant foreman and a much greater staff to accomplish the same basic amount of work. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I'm confident we won't bring more in-house than we already have, and that we'll continue the unique balance of what we do in-house versus through contract. But I think it'll be an interesting test case as we look at the operational sides and then some of the functions within Town Hall. It'll be an interesting year.
Right.
I think, you know, what people may not realize, because they're not dealing day to day in organization structures and things like that, but, you know, as you described that flat model, that responsibility ultimately rolled up to the manager, or manager and assistant manager, the manager. And, you know, we're now a town of 36,000 people. The needs have grown. Just the infrastructure has grown, just in maintaining streets and utilities and those types of things. The types of needs, you know, we're building, treatment plants, and I mean, just the model is very different than when that very flat organization was done, and that all rolls up to one individual, and so there's not that the manager can't potentially handle it, but I think we were starting to see was the stress and cracks and strains of that, because it's just impossible for 1 or even 2 people to manage that eventually at that level. So. And I think the other dynamic that's going on is we just have different what would the word be? Different demographic of employees coming in now, right? You know, so we have very long-term employees retiring.
Who all live in town.
All live in town.
Because at the time, a beautiful home was 20 grand.
Yep, and their
And it's-
expectations about
exactly.
work and what you do, is very different than the new generation coming up now, and that's what all businesses are dealing with. It's not just municipalities, but I think its timing is just right to put to reevaluate it, and I think the manager, Kevin has done a great job in putting in this new model, but the results, taking advantage of retirements and other movements, the result is less than 1 FTE, 1 full-time equivalent person, impact on the budget. And to me, that's amazing. So.
Right, because most people, and I'm sure some people watching tonight, as we
what's an FTE?
well, no, but as we mentioned this reorganization, immediately you see dollar signs.
Right.
What's this going to cost us?
Right.
But actually taking advantage of the retirements and moving certain functions around, as Moira mentioned, less than 1 full-time employee is being added to the operation. And our expectation is we're going to be able to deliver services better. I mean, we're trying to respect people as far as retirement, so we don't want to announce publicly before someone does, but we were all at a public event the other night recognizing one of our department heads who publicly for his retirement. Central Mass Regional Planning gave our highway superintendent, John Knipe, their Lifetime Achievement Award. John had been very active for many years at Central Mass Regional Planning as its chairman, as a member of the board, and John has announced that he He's done plowing snow for the town of Shrewsbury, or overseeing the plow, and
And plowing.
yeah, he was out there. I mean, there's no, as well. Another instance where sometimes it's good that they're out there, and sometimes it's better to be in the command center, so to speak.
I think it'll be an interesting challenge, because to me, the real challenge is, Dan lived in town. All the senior department heads lived in town, with the exception of a couple of folks who had more of a administrative background than an operational background. So if you called complaining about a plowing situation, John Knipe went down with the town vehicle and took care of it. And now that you
Literally.
oh no, literally, you're right. So as you go through this next generation, which simply can't afford to buy a house in this town, that will be very different. So the challenge I think Kevin really has is maintaining the communication so he gets what news he should know and that he would have known under the old model, still up to him as we transition to a new model. Because a concern I think we all have to some extent is that the moment managers become separated from what's going on, it becomes dicey. Remember Dan used to say the manager needs to know every number? And he did, and I think Kevin does. And if you begin between living out of town and maybe being a layer or two away, my only concern is that they begin to not get an accurate version of an issue that may be with a building permit or with a sewer connection. That's going to be the real challenge of filtering what's hoo-ha versus, that's an important matter.
Well, I think I think this change is going to be good. I think it's too bad that we're going to lose somebody with 43 years experience with
Was
the
it a
town.
78, right?
They haven't. I don't know if they figured out yet how they're going to download all that stuff out of his memory, but we're talking a change operationally, but we're not adding that much administration, and the staff that we're adding is more support staff, business purchasing, that kind of stuff. I think as long as we don't get to the point where, like you were talking about, where you have the head of DPW, you have 4 administrative assistants, you got, these guys over here, these guys over there, where you really start getting layers of bureaucracy in it, I think that would be problematic. I don't see us going that way. I don't think anybody's advocated that. I think we have to watch it over the next couple of years and make sure that that isn't what happens. But I think the change is going to be good. Although I will say, if you remember, John, I don't remember exactly when we did it, but it was a few years ago when we put in the pavement management system. And it was an issue of, do we need it or not? Well, John knows it all, and he really did. And it was like, but John, you're not going to be here forever. We got to build up some history. And when they inventoried all the roads, and they laid it out, John was right on it. It was amazing that he really was right on it. So, I mean, guys can do it, but it takes a lot of work, and it's become more complex. Purchasing has become more structured. There's more legal aspects to it. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes, but.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off, Mo, because the clock over there says we have less than 30 seconds left as we kick off our new season of Selectmen's Roundtable. And as I mentioned, we're going to, I promise you there will be another episode shortly after this one, and we'll continue to try to get out in the field a little bit and also come to the table a little bit. So thank you for watching Selectmen's Roundtable, and we'll see you the next time.